So Donald Trump is calling out Russia for their role in propping up the Assad regime, writing on Truth Social that Bashar al-Assad reportedly fled the country because, quote, Putin was not interested in protecting him any longer. Trump went on to call for a ceasefire in Ukraine. Yesterday, Trump met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky in Paris before the grand reopening of the Notre Dame Cathedral. Joining us now is The Guardian's senior political correspondent, Hugo Lowell, and Atlanta Journal constitutional columnist, Sophia Nelson.
It is good to see you both, Hugo. Let me start with you, show you this poll from Politico. After Trump was late, Zelensky-Macron trilateral was all smiles and handshakes. French President Emmanuel Macron achieved a diplomatic milestone Saturday, hosting the first in-person meeting between Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky and United States President-elect Donald Trump since he won the election in November. Talk to me both about the stakes and the way that the president-elect is positioning himself.
What was fascinating about that meeting was the fact that they brought everyone together for the trilateral, right? And this is Europe rolling out the carpet for him. And, Trump got a #1 spot at the Notre Dame opening. He got one of the best seats. And this is like Macron and the EU people and NATO saying, we really want you to be on our side here because for us, it really matters. Europeans have a very long history of having to fight off aggression from the East, Russia in particular. And so this matters a lot to Europeans, I think, in a way that sometimes maybe members of Congress and senators don't always comprehend and how big of a deal it is for the EU and for NATO in particular. And it was interesting how they brought everyone together in that moment to have Macron and Zelensky and then them showing a united front to say, look, you might be coming in as the incoming president, but we are all united. So you have to deal with all of us and you have to deal with all of us wanting to support Ukraine in ongoing conflicts and now also in Syria. And I think that was a very deliberate moment, obviously, but I think it was one that carried extra significance.
So, Sophia, to Hugo's point, it matters a lot to our European allies. It matters a lot to Macron. But does it matter to Donald Trump? Donald Trump, in that setting, has a very different view of the men in that room, that he, and a very different view of the situation. Now, on the heels of that, you have Syria. This morning, Assad is out. HTS is on the ground and controlling things. The rebels, Democrats and Republicans in Congress are now considering appointees of this incoming administration, specifically with respect to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard. What's your assessment at this point when you look at this? And I'll give you a little bit of help.
It's a lot, Michael.
I know. But it's Sunday morning. You can handle it.
I got it. Let's go.
Gabbard is, been reported by NBC. Gabbard has been accused of repeatedly echoing propaganda spread by Russia and the Assad regime, including questioning U.S. intelligence assessments that the Syrian government carried out multiple chemical weapons attacks on its own people. So there are records. There's a history of Gabby and Assad in Syria. What's your take on all of this?
Well, it's Sunday morning, so there is a God. And I say that because this couldn't be a worse series of events for Tulsi Gabbard's nomination than what's unfolding in Syria right now. Positive in that I think we all agree that Assad was a dictatorous, horrible, vicious leader, and I'm glad he's been deposed. I don't think we know what that looks like yet, and I think it does have to play out, to echo Trump's sentiments on Twitter yesterday. But I think that the bottom line here is I think this helps to sink her nomination and give the Republican Senate more of a ability to have that backbone to say, yeah, I don't think she's the right person, particularly at this moment. And it'll be interesting to see what they do. I'm not optimistic, but I do think that there will be a lot of pressure to not have her be there. I think to your broader question of does it matter to Donald Trump what the EU's doing, what Europe is doing, I think that Macron and the new prime minister of the UK and others in NATO will have to stand shoulder to shoulder, like you said, and they will have to push him, say, listen, we're going to go it alone if you don't line up with the rest of the world. But Trump, I don't know that that's going to be much of a persuasive stick, if you will, to him to get him in line because he does what he wants to do.
So, Michael, Hugo, Sophia, as we are on air, we have some breaking news, a statement by Putin's press secretary. Quote, "We have carefully read the statement which the U.S. President-elect Donald Trump delivered. Russia is open to negotiations on Ukraine and welcomes peace initiatives coming." Your reaction?
It's quite an extraordinary moment, actually, because if you think about it, I wonder if this is a setback on multiple fronts for Russia, and how Trump is going to deal with this, you'll have to see, right? Because Russia obviously has substantial interests. Let's just deal with Syria for the moment. They have, bases there. The fact that they pulled back their support from Assad, and the fact that they may have to now pull back their presence in Syria is one thing. But the fact that they now have to pull back their presence potentially from Ukraine suggests they're on the back foot. I think this is an incredible opportunity, frankly, for Trump to step in if he wants to. This is the guy, by the way, that has been promising that he's going to end, the war in Ukraine in 24 hours. But I think Trump, for the first time, maybe has the upper hand. And we'll see how he responds to this, because obviously he's not the president yet.
Right, and what the contours of those negotiations are, given the folks we know he has already brought into his inner circle who would be part of those negotiations, should he be the one to lead them.
And I wonder about the timing as well, on a different note, because, from Russia's perspective, you see kind of Biden's term coming to an end, you see Trump coming in, you see people like Tulsi Gabbard, who you think might be a little sympathetic to Russia. And I wonder if this is, I'm kind of processing in real time here, but I also wonder if this is Russia saying, oh, we're on the back foot, but we might have a sympathetic administration coming in. Now's the time to start making overtures. It's actually not very reminiscent of 2016. If you remember what happened then, they were having their own communications. The Trump transition was having communications with the Russian embassy in Washington. And I wonder if this is a repeat tactic of an attempt to get around the current administration and curry favor with Trump in advance.
The thing that's interesting, though, in light of this new news, Sophia, is what is the Biden administration doing? I mean, Trump is not the president.
Yeah.
He's the president-elect, and yet everyone seems to be moving in this space as if he is. And I get that part of it. He's an incoming administration, and he's so volatile and unpredictable. People want to try to put a lid on as much of his crazy as they can. But you still have a sitting president right down the street here.
Two quick points.
How does Biden deal with this? Because Biden, at this point, in my view, given these developments, could probably bring to a closure a number of things in 24 hours, if he really wanted to.
I think two things. One, the deal that Trump and Putin are going to want to offer Zelensky is one he can't accept, because it's going to mean conceding territory, and it's also going to mean saying he's not going to join NATO, right? That's going to be unacceptable to him, and I think the hardliners in the Ukrainian government, who feel like rightly so, listen, this was a war of aggression by Putin. This isn't something that happened and Ukraine was the aggressor and they should cede something. So I think that's a problem. But I think back to Biden and Harris, I think he's got, 40 days left, something like that. I think he's going to have a statement probably here shortly. And I think that you're going to see Jake Sullivan and others try to come up, like you said, with some type of agreement now if they can get it. But Putin's not going to want to do that, because he's going to want to wait till his boy Trump gets in. And that's the problem I see.
All righty. Hugo Lowell and Sophia Nelson, thank you both. Really appreciate it.